meet one of the great entrepreneurs of the city, and my dear friend, Jeff Dennis.
Yeah, you know, I was a founder of the Toronto chapter of what was called the Young Entrepreneurs Organization, and they had to change the name because they used to kick us out at 40, and then they realized they were losing some of their best resources. So it's now called the Entrepreneurs Organization, and I'm still involved. As you can tell, I'm over 40. So I'm really pleased to be here. I'm really excited about, here's my notes. I'm very excited about being involved with TIE. I got introduced to TIE, I guess through my colleague Craig. I judged last year at the TIE Quest, and I've been to a number of the TIE Institute events towards the end of last year. But because of my background working with entrepreneurs and developing the Entrepreneurs Organization, both here in Toronto and globally, this whole area of entrepreneurial education and helping mentor entrepreneurial companies is really a passion of mine. You know, I wouldn't tell too many people around Fasken's, but I'd probably come and do what I do every day for free. Because it's really kind of in my blood. It's a passion that I have. I mentor a lot of companies. It's part of, I guess, my process to figure out that underwriting decision, whether or not we want to bet on them, whether I would invest in them myself or the firm would best invest some of our fees. So I do tend to spend a lot of time with companies, with CEOs, with entrepreneurs, and it's really how I spend my day. You know, as you heard, I started a business in 1989 and grew it with some partners for many years, and had along the way some great successes and some not so wonderful failures. But I think that's what comes with entrepreneurship, and I'll talk a little bit about that more later. But the point I was going to make was that, you know, it's really about being out there and being part of the community and being part of the entrepreneurial process. And so today what I want to talk about, as you heard, or you may have heard, I wrote a book a number of years ago called Lessons from the Edge. And Lessons from the Edge is a collection of stories by entrepreneurs of their biggest screw-ups in business and the lessons that they learned. Pretty simple. Because I went out and collected all these stories and talked to all these entrepreneurs, all of a sudden I'm an expert. So I suppose I did the research, and maybe I did my MBA or PhD or whatever it is through the School of Hard Knocks and talking to a lot of entrepreneurs and working with a lot of entrepreneurs. But I think I really have a pretty good insight into, you know, what makes an entrepreneur tick, and also the whole notion of what our book was really about the common mistakes. And the fact that many of those mistakes are made because we're making decisions with limited resources on the fly with little time, and we just got to make a decision. And my hope in writing the book was that we could, you know, give you some insight as to what mistakes and what pitfalls and problems are likely to you're likely to face on your entrepreneurial journey. And when those things arise, at least you've had a little forewarning, and maybe could pivot right instead of left and make a better decision. So, you know, the book, while well received, and it gave me the opportunity literally to travel the world and talk to entrepreneurs in just about every country in the world, you know, there's no real genius in it. The genius was in collecting the intellectual capital and sharing it with people. And I think that's what this is all about. You know, the TIE Institute is about bringing together 80 experts and entrepreneurs and people who want to share that intellectual capital, that we can record it on the video and be there for posterity so that we can help future generations of entrepreneurs. And so that's what I'm really excited about. You know, for me, as you've heard, I've had no real formal education in business. I went to law school, as you heard, but for me, you know, while I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents were entrepreneurs, and I think that's part of the immigrant thing. I mean, my family's been in Canada for, you know, a very long time, over 100 years, but, you know, like so many others, we all came with nothing and came as a family that, you know, had to figure it out and didn't have all the resources and didn't have all the contacts and were very much outsiders. And so 100 years later, I have the benefit of that, and I'm sort of the beneficiary of all of that. And I see how important entrepreneurship is for new Canadians, because for many people, that's what opens the doors. And what I find, and we're having this event on October 10th, the launch event for our SEED program. We're doing it at a company called Achievers, which used to be called I Love Rewards, a fellow by the name of Razor Sulman. I don't know if you know about Razor, but he's quite a success story, and I'll take a little bit of credit for that, but he truly is a business genius and deserves all the credit, and certainly most of the credit. But one of the things that he had me do for him, in addition to sort of the traditional business mentorship, was every second week my mandate was to arrange a lunch or a cup of coffee or a dinner with somebody who he should know. Help a new Canadian integrate into the Canadian business community. So whether it was a lawyer or an investment banker or somebody from the marketing world or somebody from a public chartered accounting firm or whatever. And we went through, over the course of a year, we must have met 15 or 20 people, either formally through that, but also informally. And it really expanded his business. So, I mean, organizations like TIE, having mentors like me, can really expedite the growth of these businesses, and I'm quite excited about it. The agenda for my remarks are basically to share with you the stories, not the stories, but some of the key lessons from my book. There's 50 lessons, there's 5 chapters. Each chapter has 10 lessons, and the chapters are leadership, people, so hiring and dealing with employees, partners, money, and the personal side of business. And so as we did our research and went and met with entrepreneurs literally around the world, I started to ask myself, what is it that we all have in common? What makes an entrepreneur? Is it, because you see entrepreneurs, some of them are sales guys and women. Some of them are inventors. Some of them come out of management consulting and know better how to run a business. So the origin of the entrepreneur is different. Some entrepreneurs are born entrepreneurs. We know those people, the people that ran lemonade stands and sold stuff out of their university dorm room or whatever, and they just have it in their blood and they can't help themselves, and they're born entrepreneurs. And some of them are made entrepreneurs, and probably I fall into that category, where circumstances change and you're out of a job or out of an opportunity, and you just got to, necessity being the mother of invention, you got to make it work and you got to survive, and you're an entrepreneur by necessity. So that's not sort of a common thread. So I kept asking myself, like, what is it? What is it that makes people entrepreneurs? At one time I was invited to speak at Western. It was one time. They had just launched this program for entrepreneurs, and I took the controversial position that you can't teach entrepreneurship. Lily, I'm sorry. But you can teach lots of skills that are beneficial to entrepreneurs. You can teach them about accounting and marketing and finance and 32 items on a curriculum, and that are all very beneficial. But I don't think you can really teach somebody how to be an entrepreneur. You either, you got it in your guts and you got it in your bones, or you don't. And that's been my experience. What I found was the one thing. Does anybody have a thought about what that one thing is? What makes an entrepreneur? Does anybody have any?
Passion.
Passion, yeah, that's for sure. Maybe that's the other side of the same coin.
The burning desire to be independent.
Okay, I like that. Any other thoughts? Sir?
Perseverance.
Perseverance. Diana?
Willingness to take a risk.
Willingness to take a risk. So I think all of those are related to what I'm going to suggest as the answer, and of course it's only my opinion, so it may not be correct, but I think the answer is courage, right? You have the courage to take the risk. You have the courage to have the perseverance. You have the courage to not listen to all the naysayers that say you're coming up against Google, you're going to come up against Facebook, you're going to come up against IBM or Apple or whoever, and they say, forget it, you haven't got a prayer. and yet you still do it. You get up in the morning, you go to work, and you take on these, obstacles and challenges that nobody in their right mind would do. And so maybe it's stupidity, but I think it's courage. The F word's a 4-letter word. In my world, it's failure. And if you think about it, entrepreneurs never, ever speak the F word. They never talk about failure. It's my next entrepreneurial project. It's, my new vision. They're pivoting. They're learning lessons from their experiences. Nobody talks about failure. And again, that's part of this paradigm of courage, that people just don't think that way. They think that there's going to be a solution. They think that there's going to be a business there. They think they've got a market, and they make whatever decision they have to do to survive. And the F word is something that nobody, and when we did our research, nobody would use the F word. I mean, it was just completely out of the vocabulary. The other thing that I learned about entrepreneurs, and I think this speaks a lot about the Thai Institute and the kind of faculty that we have, entrepreneurs want to learn from one another. They're not sort of book learning people. I mean, in fact, I used to say that the Entrepreneurs Organization was really a club for ADD sufferers. There's probably some scientific evidence to support that maybe a lot of entrepreneurs actually do have ADD, because they're very focused on projects and the excitement around that. And I'm not making any kind of scientific or medical diagnosis, but it really makes you wonder sometimes when you go to these events and hang out with entrepreneurs, because there's always so much activity going on. And what we found was that these people just love to learn from each other, because rather than sitting down and reading a book, it's sharing the stories, it's sharing the experiences. One of the things that EO does that I think is one of its greatest benefits is they have a thing called forum. And once a month, members will meet with other members, the same group, for 3 hours on a highly confidential basis. None of the members in this little forum are in competing businesses, and they are effectively your board of advisors. And you're learning about business by talking to other entrepreneurs, by looking at what they did in a similar situation, and really trying to understand what it's like to walk a mile in somebody's shoes before you actually have to take a step. So what we found was that people really, really loved to do these, to learn from each other. And when the book actually came from, it was a little bit backwards. Most people write a book and they run around trying to promote to sell the book. My book actually came the other way around. I was doing these seminars where we called them Lessons from the Edge, and I'd get entrepreneurs from EO to come up on a panel and tell their war stories and tell these lessons. And it was really powerful stuff, because everybody in the audience, was either been there, done that, or was up at night worried about, being there and doing that. And so as people would get up and be really honest and candid about their stories, I mean, you could hear a pin drop in the audience. And people would, I remember people actually literally running out of the room to call somebody, their lawyer, their rabbi, I don't know, but they would, go take the lesson that they learned and run. And what I found was this peer-to-peer learning was really, really powerful stuff. So the book is really about collecting that intellectual capital and sharing it and codifying those lessons. So, as I said earlier, the book has 5 chapters: leadership, people, partnerships, money, and personal issues. I'm going to share with you tonight one lesson from each, and then there's going to be like the bonus lesson. If that's not enough, you'll have to go read the book for the rest. But as I said earlier, the other thing we found was people tend to make the same mistakes. As we talk to people, the mistakes weren't novel. And they were, in some respects, when you kind of thought about it, well, maybe they were kind of stupid mistakes, that if you had the time and you had the advice and you had the resources, you might do something differently. So the idea, as I said, was to pull this together, share these mistakes, read them before you face them, and hopefully you may spare yourself some of the pain that myself and some of my colleagues endured in order to be able to provide the material for the book. So let's talk about leadership. I talked about all this already. Sorry. I probably should have an assistant, but I'm not that well organized. So leadership. Leadership's all about vision. I mean, I'm sure Diana can speak to this. If you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. I mean, it's just as simple as that. And everybody's looking to you as the leader of the entrepreneurial enterprise. And if you don't know where you're going, then A, no one's going to follow you, and B, you're not likely to get anywhere meaningful. So the whole idea is really to define what your business is, figure out where you're going, and communicate it. It should almost be like a mantra. All your people, all your employees, even your stakeholders, customers, bankers, investors, everybody should know where this business is going. And if they're not able to recite it back and do that elevator pitch, then you're doing something wrong. And so having a vision is really critical. Communicating it, writing it down and communicating it, and then using it as a benchmark against everything you do is measured. You're hiring people that share your vision, share your culture, share your corporate culture, and share your values. You're setting your goals around that vision and setting all of those things around your vision. And all your plans and your business plan, your marketing plans, and your financial projections, they're all centered around that vision. So the vision is critical. It sounds obvious, but what happens is people get so excited about the business that they're busy selling before they actually think about where they're going. People. The top lesson about people is hire slow and fire fast. So what I found was that people, especially in fast growth situations where they're hiring people quickly, they're just putting people in jobs, or they're moving people around from job to job, and they're not necessarily bringing in the right people that they absolutely need to grow this business. Some of these suggestions don't necessarily apply to a startup because it's founders and it's not employees, and I've got something to say about that in a minute about partnerships. But when you talk about hiring your first group of people, hire people that understand your vision, that share your values, that share that corporate culture, that will feed into it and support it. Take your time. Make it a process. If you read, now I've gone blank on the book. It'll come to me. But there's a wonderful book on hiring and bringing in the right people. And the whole point of it was to take your time. At I Love Rewards, or Achievers as they're now called, they actually do group interviews, and they do a series of them. They'll bring in a guy to be a CFO, so very senior job, and they'll have a room full of these candidates, and they'll put them all together and go through a group interview. They'll have different people from different parts of the business, unrelated to the work that candidate might be doing, interviewing. They want to get past that mask. Anybody can read a website. Anybody can recite back to you your stated corporate values and whatever. And how do you get past that? You're going to have to spend some time. You're going to have to make it a process. In some cases, I would suggest hiring a headhunter, or be the headhunter if you can't afford one. The good people already have jobs. They're not home in fuzzy slippers waiting, for that call from monster.com, right? So how do you find them? You either have to do it yourself, or you got to hire a headhunter. But the best people are already employed. Check references. And I think the hardest thing and the most admirable thing that I can see in entrepreneurs is those that have the courage to know their own limitations and are prepared to hire better than themselves. A lot of people get intimidated. They don't want to look stupid. And if ego's in the way, I mean, for me, that's a bit of a red flag for getting involved with an entrepreneur. If somebody knows what their limitations are and is prepared to hire somebody better than themselves, and even in some cases step aside and let them run with it, you still own the business, you're still the chairman of the board, you're still the founder of this business, but your responsibility is to the business. And so hire better than yourself. And the second part of that sort of lesson is fire fast. The bottom line is, if you made a mistake, cut bait. I've done it myself the wrong way. You think that these people are indispensable, you think maybe you can reform them. Inevitably, if your instinct tells you that you got the wrong person, make the move now, you'll do the job yourself and fill in the gaps later. Don't keep somebody around who just doesn't meet these criteria, that doesn't meet your culture, doesn't meet your values, and isn't really performing up to your standards. It's a cancer in the business. Partnerships. We could have written an entire book on partnerships. There were so many examples, particularly with startups. Everybody needs a founder, a co-founder. Somebody's an inventor, another guy's BD, somebody's got management skills, somebody's got customer relations, somebody's whatever. And they throw in together, and away you go. And it's interesting, one of the things we found was that people spent more time interviewing employees than they did prospective partners. They get so excited about the business that they forget to really ask themselves, like, is this the person I'm going to want to be in business with for all, for 10 years? Do we share the same values? Do we share the same timeline? He's 30, I'm 50. He's going to retire to Florida, and I'm just getting started. I mean, there's all sorts of issues about the partner. It's a much bigger commitment than hiring somebody. You can always fire somebody. When you got a partner, as I say here, partnerships are like marriage. Easy to get into, really messy to get out of. So, the first and most important lesson is once you figure out who your partners are, get it in writing. That's the pitch for the lawyers, okay? But as I say, they're like marriages, easy to get into, messy to get out of. Take your time. Make sure you're getting into this marriage, getting into bed with the right partner. And ask those questions, the same questions. Do they share your values? Do they share your vision? Culturally, I mean, I'm not talking ethnic culture, I'm talking about corporate culture. Do they share your values? Think about an exit strategy from the beginning. I'm not saying that you go to your investors and say, okay, like we're going to take this public, or we're going to sell it to IBM, or we're going to sell it to Apple or Facebook or whatever. But I'm talking about what happens if problems ensue between the partners. What are you going to do? How are you going to get out of it? You might be selling, take one with, the other one drags the other one along, the shotgun. I mean, there's all sorts of mechanisms that lawyers can help you with to figure out how to get out of this thing, but you got to think about it at the beginning and put those pieces in place so that if problems do arise, you have a roadmap to get out of this. In that shareholders agreement and in all your discussions, think about who does what. And it's not unusual for people to wear different hats. You can be an employee, you can be a director, you can be a shareholder, and you don't have to be all of those things. So over time that might evolve, and you got to think about what people will do and what their roles and responsibilities and rights are going to be. And again, and this is just more of a personal opinion, if it's not working, get out. Life's too short. It's just the heartache of litigation and fighting and negotiating. It's way better, in my experience, to cut bait and move on. But again, that's just me talking. Money. When I have clients and prospective clients and entrepreneurs come and see me, they always think it's about money, right? Everybody comes, it's all about the money. But when you start sort of pulling back some of the layers, you realize very quickly that it's really more than about money. Obviously they do need money, but they need a lot more, and that's kind of where I come in. But once we get to the point of money, something that my grandfather once said to me, and he was a consummate entrepreneur, and that was, he believed in having one God and two bankers. Some diversification. Here I met one guy from the Scotia, one guy from TD. So, we got two bankers here. But it's important because if you got all your eggs in one basket, and you got a problem with one of your financial supporters, you got nowhere else to go. So it's very important to diversify your financial resources. The other thing, I guess the key lesson that came out of the book was raise more money than you need, which of course has a corollary that says spend less than you raise. Invariably, people when doing their budgeting and their planning guess wrong. I mean, it is only a budget. Some people go out and get the Porsche and the Aeron chairs and all the toys and bells and whistles. Probably a bad idea. But guard that money like it's your own. The economy is such that you may be the hot property right now, and then 2 years from now, they're doing something else, those VCs, and you're not going to be able to find financing. So make sure that you've got enough runway to carry you a fair way.
10Does your book talk about how to raise more than you need? Because if it does, I'm going to get the book tonight.
No, that you got to hire me for. And the last thing, nobody really talks about this, and this was actually quite popular in our lessons from the Edge panels, where people, talked about some of the personal issues that came out of being an entrepreneur. You go and hang out with entrepreneurs, and of course everybody's got their best foot forward, and everybody's got the latest, greatest, biggest idea, and nobody wants to appear weak or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, it's amazing how many divorces, how many people were, had health issues, how many people, just lost sight of what was important, addictions and all sorts of things that came out of being an entrepreneur. Not to say that it's the cause, it's like anything else in life. You can get yourself into a jam. And I guess the key lesson that we learned was listen to your mother. Live a balanced life, eat well, get plenty of sleep, do your exercise, do something spiritual. I don't care who your God is or how you find meaning in life. Do something that's a bit of a give back or spiritual course. And if you have a balanced life and you pull it all together, A, you'll be a much better entrepreneur. B, you're likely to live longer, and all those people that are relying on you, from your employees to your family to the stakeholders and bankers and all the rest of them, you're going to be there for them in the future. So here's the bonus lesson, and this was something that I think is a real problem, which is entrepreneurs, and we heard it somewhere before, are risk takers, right? So we roll the dice in our business, and then that business fails, and we start another business, and we roll the dice there, and then, or we're successful, we got some money, and now we're reinvesting it in some other entrepreneur's exciting business, and we're buying this and we're buying that, and we're rolling the dice and rolling the dice. And I guess my message is, if you're a student of investing, they tell you, high risk should yield high reward. And diversification is the other principle. So this is nothing new, but I guess the point is, once you start to get some money coming into this business, first of all, pay yourself. Secondly, put money away. Take chips off the table and save for a rainy day. And that can involve, creditor protecting yourself, whether it's as simple as putting assets or, income in a spouse's name, or people go to the extent of setting up offshore trusts and family trusts and all sorts of things, or something as simple as doing investing in a segregated mutual fund, are all various ways that people can creditor protect themselves. But it's really important, because you're probably going to sign a personal guarantee at the bank, and you're probably, in some cases, going to have to answer to the bank for it. And it'd be nice to know that after you've taken all that risk and you've taken all that blood and sweat and tears into the business, that you've got a little something to show for it at the end of the day. So take chips off the table, creditor protect yourself, and pay yourself. And the other thing that I get troubled with, and it's maybe comes with your point in life, but a lot of entrepreneurs are it's all about the ego, and that's another sort of red flag for me if it's all about the ego. We're not building businesses for personal aggrandizement or like as monuments for our longevity and legacy. We're building businesses to provide for our own personal financial security and those people that we love around us. And I think you've got to kind of keep that thought in your mind, because people lose sight of that, and then they go off on all sorts of different tangents and take risks and do things that are really, at the end of the day, could be contrary to their best interest, but they're driven by ego or something else. So just remember why we're in business. It's to make a living, it's to look after your family, it's to provide for those people that you love, and to provide a level of security, financial security. So, the key lessons that you heard tonight from my book is, have a vision, hire slow and fire fast, get it in writing when it comes to partners, raise more money than you need and spend less than you have, and of course have one God and two bankers. live a balanced life, and then finally take chips off the table and save for a rainy day. So, just to wrap up, I guess, you know, this book is a little bit of a departure. You know, most business books are written by what I would call celebrity CEOs, you know, who've had tremendous success and maybe a little bit of ego and want to, you know, impart the great wisdom. I came at it sort of a different way. You know, most of those people are what I would call Wall Street or Bay Street heroes. But, you know, to me, the real heroes are the Main Street heroes. You know, people like the entrepreneurs that we're going to support with the Institute, who are taking personal risk, they're putting mortgages on their homes, they're giving up jobs, they're taking all of this risk to do what? To start a business, to create jobs, to build the community. And to me, these are the people that we should be celebrating, the people that we should be supporting. And the reason that I'm involved in this area of endeavor, I mean, I am really, really excited about entrepreneurship, and I'm really excited about being involved with the Thai Toronto and the Thai Institute. And I'm really excited about being at Fasken's and being the entrepreneur in residence. It's really been a short period of time, but it's been a terrific, terrific experience for me, and I'm really looking forward to many more years to come working with entrepreneurs and trying to help people get to the next level. That's it. If anyone has any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer them. And I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Any questions? Any criticisms? Any disagreements? I don't. They're on Amazon. I'm not here to sell. I'm here to sell legal services. But the book is available on Amazon. We sold, I think, about 15,000 copies. You know, when the book came out, and just to give you a little bit of background about it, it came, as you heard, of the Entrepreneurs Organization, and I was involved with the Kauffman Foundation, and they used me in the book as a chapter development tool. And it was really fortuitous, because what it enabled me to do was literally travel to the entire EO network of chapters and speak. So I've been to the EO chapter in Kathmandu, you know, Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, Kuala Lumpur, I mean, you name it, I've been there. And so for me, you know, it's been quite an adventure, and it's really opened my eyes to see not only, you know, entrepreneurship as we see it here in North America, but some of the differences that you see in other parts of the world.